Welcome back. Today I want to talk about the difference between RGB and CMYK. And if we are working on images for a web or to view on a monitor, we're going to keep that image in the RGB color space, color mode. If we are going to send this out to a printer, a commercial printer, then we will work in CMYK. And the first thing we need to do is we need to come up here and see how we have our color settings set up in Photoshop. So I'm going to choose Edit, and I'm going to come down here to Color Settings. And this dialog box is going to allow us to set up how Photoshop deals with different images. So here I have, whenever I open Adobe Photoshop, you'll see that my working space is set for RGB. It's set to Adobe RGB 1998. CMYK is set to US Sheet Fed Coded version 2. My grayscale is Gamma 2.2. Spot dot gain 20%. And I like to turn these color management policies off. So I usually RGB, CMYK, and gray. I'm going to turn those off. And I'm going to check this box right here that says Ask When Opening. So profile mismatches. Whenever you bring in an sRGB file into Photoshop, or open one, and you have this color profile set up in Adobe Photoshop, it's going to ask you, what do you want to do with that image? Do you want to use the working space color profile and convert? Do you want to do nothing? Or do you want to open it as the color profile that you have, which is sRGB? So this is how you should have your computer set up if you're using Photoshop. And when we're using CMYK, it's always a good idea to call your printer or whoever's doing the final output and ask them what type of color mode do you want do they want you to use when you're working with CMYK. Different printing companies may have different profiles and different workflows for dealing with their images. So alright, so this is how you should have it set up for normal RGB and CMYK viewing. Now, and you can save these profiles or these color settings. I also have one for that I call web. Now for web, I like to work in the sRGB mode, and I hope that doesn't confuse you. Okay. So these are my color profiles so if I'm working on a website, I will switch these color settings so that when I open my images, it's going to make sure that everything is sRGB. Okay? So I'm going to go back to that main. So now everything's going to be Adobe RGB 1998. We'll say OK. And I'm asking you to convert these, and I've asked you to convert these before. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come right down here, and I'm going to look and see. This is set to document profile. I see that I brought this in as sRGB, and I want it to be Adobe RGB 1998. I'll come up here to Edit, and I want to convert to profile. So I want to convert from sRGB to Adobe RGB 1998. So here's my source space. Here's the profile that it is. And this is what I'm going to convert it to. We'll say OK. And now you come down here and you say that it's an untagged image. Alright, so all we have to do is come up here to Edit. And now we converted the profile, but now we need to tag it. and we want to say working Adobe RGB. Yes, we want that to be a working, we want that a profile assigned to it. We'll say OK. And now we have Adobe RGB 1998 assigned to this image. Alright, and I'm asking you then to crop it. So we go over here to our crop tool. And we come up here, and I have specific dimensions that I want you to crop it to, so we'll say size and resolution. And I think I said 3 by 3 at 150. I think that's right. If not, make sure you do what I have asked you to do. We'll say OK. Here's the crop. And I say that looks pretty good. So now we've cropped this image down to 3 inches by 3 inches at 150 pixels per inch. You're not done yet. Now let's say we were going to take this out to, or send this out to a printer, commercial printer, 4-color process. We would want to change this to CMYK. And to do that, we're going to go up here to Image, and we're going to pull down to Image Mode, and we'll just say CMYK color. You are about to convert to CMYK with no color profile. This may not be what you want, what you intend. To choose a profile, use Edit, Convert to Profile. Okay. We'll say OK. And you'll see that the colors have changed a little bit. If I go Command Z, you'll see that the colors get duller. And that's simply because CMYK can't, the color space of CMYK can't match some of those colors that we can match on a on an RGB monitor, those colors. So it kind of dulls them. And remember, it said that the profile, when you convert to CMYK, you're going to have to do something a little different. So now we come down here and look. It's an untagged CMYK. We've converted it to CMYK, and now we need to go to Edit, and we'll say Assign Profile. And this time we want that working CMYK, or we could pull down here and choose the same thing. So we could come down here to, I think I said Web Sheet Fed Coded, I think. Is that what it was? Yeah, this is how I have Photoshop set up when I'm looking at CMYK files. Or we can choose it right here, Sheet Fed Coded. And we'll say OK. And now you'll see that our CMYK is tagged with this US Sheet Fed Coded version 2. So that's how we're going to convert either RGB images, or we're going to change it into CMYK, and then when we change it into CMYK, we're going to have to tag it with our, we always have to be watching those color profiles. And to be sure, you might want to call your printer before you work too much on these images. You'll call your printer and say, what kind of color profile, what kind of workflow do you guys use when you convert to CMYK from RGB? Alright, I think that's it. That should help you for this exercise. And I will see you down the road in yet another video tutorial.